So, because I talk way too much during these retrospectives, I had to split the Doom 3 video into two parts. Part 1 was me covering the main game, this video is covering Resurrection of Evil and the Lost Mission, and a bit of the BFG Edition as a whole. So if you haven't checked out Part 1, you might want to do that. I'll wait. Okay, I'm just gonna assume you watched Part 1, so let's talk about Resurrection of Evil. Disclaimer, just like in Part 1, I am not using the vanilla version of the game, and I'm using the Doom 3 mod, which ports the game to the source engine, but requires you to have a legitimate copy of the game to run. On top of that, I'm also using the Doom 3 Enhanced Edition mod, which makes some changes to the game, mostly quality of life stuff. I will bring up what the changes do when it's relevant. So in 2005, the expansion pack for Doom 3 was released. This one wasn't developed by id, actually. Instead, another studio called Nerve Software handled this one. From what I understand, they have a pretty good relationship with id because it was co-founded by a former id Software employee named Brandon James. It seems like they mostly assist dev teams with their games or make ports of other games a lot, and most of these are Doom ports. They also ported a lot of the Call of Duty games, including most of the Black Ops games, but we aren't here for that. So as I said, Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil came out in 2005, April 4th to be specific, and it later released on the original Xbox on October 5th. With the Xbox version, you don't need the base game to play, you just stick the disc in the Xbox and fire up the console. Resurrection of Evil is actually a sequel to Doom 3 and it's set 2 years later. Now you'd think the UAC would just not go back to Mars after the horrific incident. But no. They come back 2 years later, and I just gotta ask, what did they tell people? Like, do they tell people what happened? You know, the people that had to sign up to come here, like, do they know? Is the job market that awful that people will go back to Mars after the horrific demon invasion? You know what? That actually checks out. I wonder if they just didn't tell anybody what happened. They just said, oh, it was a tragic accident or something. That's probably on brand for evil corporations in a sci-fi game anyway. But the reason we're here is because one of the Martian satellites detected a signal from the planet. So we're here to investigate that. And I'm sure since we destroyed the Hell Portal back in Doom 3, nothing bad will happen, right? Right? Sorry to interrupt the video for a second, but I need to talk to you about something. So, in addition to running a YouTube channel, I'm also an author with 3 books out at the time of making this, and it would really mean a lot if you guys check them out on Amazon. Currently, I have the Renegade series, which has 2 books in it with a 3rd one in the works. It's a sci-fi action adventure story in the spirit of 90s cartoons and comics. The series follows a team of heroes, each with their own unique abilities, one of them being a sword-wielding, water-bending alien named Ronan. This group, called the Renegades, protect their world from all sorts of threats. The second book, Blackout, has a team following a lead on their arch nemesis, and they end up in their universe's version of Japan. The team find themselves in the crosshairs of a dangerous group of mercenaries and the shadowy group that hired them. As things escalate between them, the mercenaries, and the ones pulling their strings, the entire fate of the island hangs in the balance, as it is plunged into darkness and held hostage with the aid of a powerful weapon called Blackout. If you're looking for something less serious and more whimsical, consider checking out Tales of the Edgeworlds Volume 1. It's a collection of 4 zany, off-the-wall comedy stories set in a broken multiverse, and features characters such as a violent, short-tempered, foul-mouthed, gun-toting space penguin named Edgy, and his crew of oddballs getting into crazy hijinks, involving mutants, space mafias, and vampires that are also from space. It also includes a story about a dorky, clumsy combat android named Mika 227 that tangles with a feared space pirate captain to save some miners. It also recently got an audiobook, which only amplifies the hilarity in these stories, and it really makes the characters jump off the page with the over-the-top voices that the narrator does. The link to my Amazon page for all 3 books will be in the description and in the pinned comment. Back to the video. Oh. Well, that didn't take too long, did it? I have no idea what drove our character to pick up the pulsing heart thing. I'm just gonna chalk that up to morbid curiosity. And look where that got us. That pulsing demon heart artifact thing will become very important in a second, and it completely changes the flow of combat. But we aren't quite there yet. We gotta navigate the ruins, and while we're here, we're jumped by a different version of the Lost Souls called the Forgotten Ones. They're just as annoying as the Lost Souls, they just look more like the Lost Souls do in any other Doom game. That's it. They are really forgettable, like their name suggests. But this first level also introduces one of the new mechanics, power cells. There are these power stations that require cells to be activated. You can take them from other stations to put them in the ones you need in order to progress. Usually when you remove the cells from a station, the area around it will lose power and the lights will go out. But this first level sort of does what the main game did with the initial demon invasion and you hearing people fighting and dying, but it's less effective here. Since you're in the ruins and there's no build up to it,
to make your way to the surface with that artifact.
Not that it's a bad thing, because this game's pace is cranked up a bit when compared to the base game, and that's partially due to it only being 12 levels long, and the other thing that I'll get to in a minute. The first level does have a strong look to it though. Creeping through massive ruins is a good first impression, and it isn't long before we're given a new toy that also kind of changes how this game works.
Fireball, but I grabbed it and threw it right back at him. You're not gonna get far with that pistol. Take this grabber. It's more useful than you think.
The grabber is a pretty interesting weapon. You can use it to grab enemy projectiles, then throw it back at them. You can also pick up certain objects and toss them. I know what you're thinking. Isn't this just a gravity gun from Half-Life 2? Yeah, it kind of is. But according to what I could find, this thing was in Doom 3 but was unused until the expansion, so it might have come first. The grabber is kind of a mixed bag, especially in the vanilla version of the game. As I said, you can grab projectiles and throw them back at enemies for big damage, but there's 2 problems with it. One of them is that you can only hold on to the object for a few seconds, but that's not the real issue. You see, in the vanilla version, when you grab an enemy projectile and hold it, the screen distorts, making it way harder to aim than it really should be. The Enhanced Edition fixes this by reducing that distortion. The grabber, even in vanilla, is pretty fun for what it is. I mean, there's always something satisfying about using your enemy's attacks against them, but that's not the main reason why I think the grabber is neat. You see, projectiles and certain objects aren't the only things you can grab. You can grab pickups that are out of reach, and more importantly, smaller enemies like the Trites, the Cherubs, Ticks, Lost Souls, and Forgotten Ones can be grabbed and flung for an insta-kill. That alone almost puts this thing in GOAT status for me. Not to mention, even if you don't hurl the projectile back at the enemy, it's just a great defensive tool to avoid the damage. Anyway, we also get the shotgun and the machine gun too. Fun fact, on the original Xbox version, the flashlight was attached to the pistol, so you could shoot something and see at the same time. I didn't mind that since the pistol is kind of weak, so it still made you feel like you were vulnerable when you had the light out, just slightly less so. On PC, it's still how it was in the base game. For a good portion of this game, we're traversing a new section of the Mars facility called Erebus. There are 6 levels, and I know what you're thinking. Oh boy, is this going to be Alpha all over again? Where the level aesthetics are pretty similar, doesn't feel like we're making any progress? No, actually. They do a great job of varying the aesthetics so it doesn't feel like you're in the same complex. You go through Martian ruins, UAC dig sites around them, and the caves, the sewage area and waste tunnels, more office and admin looking areas, and more. But going back to the levels, the second level introduces us to one of the new enemies added to this game, the Vulgar. The Vulgar is basically the new imp. It throws green fireballs like a Hell Knight, but weirdly enough, their fireball is actually weaker than the imps. But the trade-off is they can fire them much more and faster than an imp can. And this is to encourage you to use the grabber, or the other new thing I haven't mentioned yet. Vulgars come in much larger numbers than the imps, so you'll have to deal with a bunch of them. And because they crawl on all fours, it can be a little harder to hit them, but their fireballs fly more in a straight line, so it's easier to catch them with the grabber. One odd thing about the Vulgar is how they spawn. For some reason, they spawn out of green portals and not orange ones like everyone else. I don't know what's up with that. I will say the green portal does look cool though. And I wasn't kidding about the Vulgar being the new imp, by the way, because the imps don't appear nearly as much as they did in Doom 3. And the Vulgar will appear in every level going forward, and there will be a lot of them. While I like their design, part of me can't help but feel like they're a little redundant since they're not that different from an imp. It also doesn't help that there's only one other normal enemy that's new to this game, and they're kind of rare, so we won't see them for a while. Anyway, later on we find a giant Martian portal and something comes out of it.
Welcome to your death, mortal.
Yeah, we're getting a boss fight in the second level, the Helltime Hunter. It's one of the 4 bosses here. This fight is pretty neat. The shoot it till it dies strategy doesn't work because it's immune to your guns. So what you do is use the grabber to either grab its fireballs and launch them back at it, or grab the big green orbs from the Martian weapons and hit it with that. The Helltime Hunter can dash around the arena, can throw either a single fireball or a bunch at once. It also has a melee attack if you're within range. Good news is it's pretty easy to track where it's appearing because it turns into a ball of energy and leaves a trail to where it goes. This boss isn't particularly difficult, especially with the Enhanced Edition mod making it easier to see when aiming with the grabber. But after the hunter dies, that weird heart-shaped artifact that got us into this mess reacts to it.
Worthless human. This fight has only just begun.
Marine. Hello, Marine. Come in, Marine.
Yeah, I guess it's time to talk about the artifact. I don't think it was ever given an official name, I just call it the Hell Heart. This thing fundamentally changes how the game works. There's 3 power-ups it gets. Right now we only have the Helltime ability. And this is already pretty busted, because it lets you slow down time while you move at normal speed. You probably see where this is going. Funnily enough, giving the player the ability to slow down time actually speeds up the pace of the game. Because if you walk into a room and you see enemies spawning in, you could just use the artifact and run up to them with a shotgun and pull the trigger. The artifact is charged by feeding it human souls, which is kind of fucked up when you think about it, but hey, you don't need a soul, right? The time dilation ability is used to evade some hazards like mashers in this one room where there are floating blades moving way too fast for you to run past before they hit you. Though, one thing I think is odd is solving puzzles with the Helltime ability isn't that prevalent in the game. In fact, I think there are only 3 instances where that's required. I don't know, seems like a missed opportunity there. Let's talk about the other 2 powers the Hellheart gets when we get to them. But Dr. Elizabeth McNeil, the one leading the UAC at this point, at least on Mars, says we need to get the artifact to a Dr. Cloud, but before we can do that, we need to get him an item called the Primitive that will allow him to translate a Martian tablet that explains more about how the artifact works. To get to him, we gotta dodge a Martian trap room using the Heart's powers, and while we're at it, we can get a certain weapon I'm sure Doom 2 fans were very happy to see. Yeah, the super shotty is back, although they call it a double-barreled shotgun here, which, I mean, is accurate, but we'll just call it a super shotgun. And would you be shocked if I told you the super shotgun absolutely slaps in this game? It also kind of breaks the game. It deals way more damage than a normal shotgun. It feels like it has more range, but I don't think it actually does. I just think because it does more damage, it makes it seem like the range has been extended. But this thing can kill some of the tougher enemies in a single hit. Its only drawback is you gotta reload every time you shoot it, but I mean, you reload it pretty fast, and if you use it in combination with the hell time power, its constant reloading is not a big deal, unless you're getting swarmed. It's so much fun to the point where I barely use the regular shotgun over it. Moving on, we have to get power cells to turn on the filtration system to vent out toxins in the artifact storage room so we can get the primitive. Then we move on, and eventually we meet Dr. Cloud, and he tells us that there are 3 unstoppable beasts that pursue the artifact called the Hunters. We've already killed one of them, but there's 2 more. I'm sure that won't be an issue later. He also tells us that the artifact is a source of power and a one-way gateway from hell to our dimension, so we really gotta do something about this artifact. So now our goal is to get the artifact to Elizabeth. He also gives us a key to unlock the armory so we can get a chain gun. To get out of this level, something pretty neat happens. You see, we need to cross through the waste tunnels, and the waste is toxic because of course it is, so we need a helmet. This is a really cool section, and I love how the audio is muffled and our vision is altered to make it feel like you're wearing a helmet. There's a ton of enemies down here, including maggots and a new zombie variant in hazmat suits. They're basically the same as a normal zombie, it's just that they drop oxygen tanks for us so we don't suffocate. That's nice of them. But this entire section is ruined in the BFG edition because you don't put a mask on and you lose all the effects that make this section more immersive. But we aren't there yet. Eventually, you wind up going through a huge sewer tunnel with the aid of a trusty sentry bot, but at the end we run into the next boss. Yeah, meet the Berserk Hunter. So, the way this works is the Berserk Hunter jumps around and is immune to damage until he enters his Berserk mode. And you can tell he's doing that because he gets all these demon runes across his body and his glowing heart is exposed. This is the only place you can damage him. He can be annoying with how much he jumps around, but you can shut him down by using the Hell Heart and then just using the Super Shotgun. When he's not in his Berserk mode, he just throws fireballs at you for a few seconds and then he rages out again. Not a hard fight, but I imagine it would be way more difficult if you either didn't have any charges in the artifact or you just chose not to use it. But with it dead, the artifact gets a new power-up. If you watch my Doom 3 video, I brought up how rarely you got the Berserk power-up. You got it a grand total of 2 times. Well, I guess the devs at Nerve thought that too and decided, what if the artifact had the ability to grant Berserk? So, the Berserk power gives you a massive damage boost to the point where your punches can kill most enemies in a single hit. Oh, and did I forget to mention that this stacks with the Hell Time power? Meaning you get insta-kill punches and your enemies are in slow-mo. Yeah, it does that. Now you're probably thinking, okay, but to balance that, the artifact requires more souls to activate, right? No. Using both powers at once still only costs a single charge. Yeah, this is where the artifact really begins to trivialize the game, and to compensate, the game is going to start throwing more and more enemies at you. and more powerful ones too. But the game is still pretty easy, even with me playing on Veteran, which is the second hardest difficulty. Our goal now is to use the Phobos Lab teleporter to get us into Delta Lab so we can use the portal to get us to Hell. However, when we try to use it, something happens.
Please select teleport destination. Pad 1 selected.
I was afraid of that. I'll need to find a way to reroute power to the teleporter. Take the Skytram to the research sector and I'll meet you there.
Yes, now we gotta find our way to the Skytram and meet up with McNeil. In Sector 2, the game sorta does what Delta Lab Sector 1 did, where you walk around for a bit without encountering any enemies. But it doesn't last nearly as long, and it's way less creepy here. Huh. Creepy. Now that's a word I haven't used yet in this video. Yeah, that's because Resurrection of Evil isn't as focused on horror and is more focused on action. I mean, the tagline on the back of the box of the Xbox version kinda tells you what this game is going for, since it says reload for the bloodiest battle yet. It's not to say the game doesn't have the occasional creepy moment, but it's just not as much of a focus. And I have a feeling that Nerve made these changes due to feedback from players at the time, as I noticed the darkness has been toned down quite a bit. I don't mind it here since the artifact's power and the amount of enemy spawns already put this into a more action-oriented direction. Especially when you pick up the PDA with the proper clearance to progress. The game throws so many Revenants and Vulgars at you, it would feel ridiculous if we didn't have the artifact. Or the grabber. Or the super shotgun. But before we meet McNeil, we run into the last new enemy, the Bruiser. The Bruiser is probably the oddest enemy in the game in terms of design. It has a TV screen for a mouth that's showing a mouth on it. It has cannons like a Mancubus, but it can fire them way faster. They can kill you very quickly, especially if you're not using the artifact. According to the wiki, the TV mouth was a holdover from a concept to scare the players. The way it was gonna work was you'd walk up to it, thinking it's just a normal terminal, then it would change and the Bruiser would reveal itself. This was dropped and it's never used in any of the Doom 3 campaigns. Kind of a shame too, because that would have been memorable if they could pull it off. Not sure how they would though. The Bruiser ain't exactly small, so I don't know how they were supposed to hide this thing. I'm guessing they would just had to be in a really dark room and that terminal was the only thing lit up. Overall, it's a pretty fun enemy, but man, is it brutal if you don't have the artifact charges or a rocket launcher with the BFG. They have less health than the Mancubus or the Hell Knight, and thank fuck for that. Because if they were as tanky as those two, with the damage they output, we'd be screwed. Anyway, after defeating the Bruiser, we meet McNeil.
God, it's good to see you. There's so much I need to explain, but we don't have much time. The artifact is a gateway from hell. Much like the one that Betruger opened with the teleporters in the Delta Labs. With the artifact, though, as long as it resides in our dimension, there's always the danger of it being awakened, and then another invasion. The ancients knew it. And now we know it. It must be returned to the source of its evil in order to be destroyed. They couldn't do it, so they locked it away and fought to their death. You can use the Delta teleporter to return the artifact to Hell for good. I know this sounds crazy, but it's the only way. The important thing right now is getting the Phobos teleporter online. There are 4 core systems that must be shut down before I can reroute the power to the teleporter. Take this. You'll need it to get to the pumping station. Now go.
So the plan is to reroute power to the Phobos teleporter and then get into Delta to reach Hell. To do that, we gotta turn off the pumping station, auxiliary power, and the main reactor. While we're doing that, we run to the 3rd and final hunter. Yeah, less than 2 levels after we fought the Berserk Hunter, we're now fighting the Invulnerability Hunter. Kinda odd since we had to go through 4 levels before reaching the second boss. Anyway, the Invulnerability Hunter is much more of a straight up fight. The way it works is you shoot it until its health drops to a certain point, then it begins absorbing energy from the cores around it. While it's doing this, the Hunter becomes immune to damage. However, this unlocks a button to open the shielding on one of the cores so you can shoot it to destroy it, which knocks the Hunter out of its invincible mode. Sorry, I couldn't resist. The Invulnerability Hunter has one attack that's pretty annoying. It has this electric slam move that coats the whole floor in electricity. You can negate it by standing on the elevated parts of the arena, but you shouldn't do it if you're near a destroyed core because the fire they spew out will damage you. Also, there's a lower area that you can go to that has bodies to charge the artifact, and a health station, which you might need because this fight can get pretty long. You aren't safe down there because the Hunter's electric stomp move, for some reason, can somehow hit you even though you were under the shockwave. That just always felt weird to me. This may come as a shock to you, but don't try punching it while using the artifact. You'll regret it. His attacks are pretty limited besides the stomp move he throws out easily strafe electric balls, and he'll smack you if you get too close to him. Despite that, I find this fight fun. I like that you have to alternate between targeting him and targeting the reactor when he's invincible. Okay, I'll stop. Anyway, after you defeat him, you get his power too. Invulnerability. It is exactly what it sounds like. When you use the artifact, you get time dilation, a huge damage boost from the Berserk, and you're immune to all damage. Yeah, I'm thinking the artifact might be a little busted. But if you activate the artifact, you are invincible at this point. I lied. But for real, at this point, you're just wrecking demons left and right, and the game tries to compensate by throwing more enemies at you. Anyway, as we continue to shut down systems, McNeil tells us that she thinks Betruger is behind this, and she's not wrong. And that's one weird thing in this game, Betruger doesn't really address you like he would in Doom 3. You get some taunts from him when you're in front of the portal, before and after the Helltime Hunter fight, but outside of that, you rarely hear his disembodied voice, which I do think is strange. I kinda miss him hamming it up while talking mad shit. Even with the reactor and the auxiliary power shut off, that's still not enough. McNeil tells us we gotta shut off life support for all the Phobos labs.
Commencing main reactor shutdown sequence. Shutdown in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shutdown sequence complete.
I've rerouted power from the 3 systems you've already brought offline, but it still isn't enough. You'll have to shut down the life support systems for this base. You can't think twice about this. It's more important than any of this. I'll contact you again once the teleporter is.
It's a pretty steep price to pay to stop Hell from invading again. But after we do that, McNeil warns us that there are weird energy fluctuations in Delta.
Marine, come in. Marine, McNeil to Marine. Marine, I've just started picking up massive power and energy fluctuations in Delta. I've never
fluctuations before. This can't be right. It's almost like the entire complex is phasing in and out of some kind of electrical exchange.
The return to Phobos Labs Sector 1 takes the cake for the reddest level ever in Doom 3. Seriously, someone on the lighting team was asked how much red to make this level and their answer was yes. I mean, thematically it makes sense. There are emergency lights and the base is running out of oxygen since we shut off life support. Fortunately for us, there's no time limit to get to the teleporter. However, the game is throwing everything in the kitchen sink at us, and then some to stop us from getting there. Once we reach the teleporter, we end up in Delta. And Delta is in some sort of state of flux with hell and it's constantly phasing in and out, and this is probably the most creative level in the expansion. The bodies fused to the walls is a nice touch. There's some really cool bits where you go through mini portals and get teleported to different areas from Doom 3, like the offices in the UAC administration level, only they're a little more hellish looking and have stronger enemies. This level is basically a highlight reel of some sections of Doom 3, and I won't lie, it's a pretty cool penultimate level. And it doesn't overstay its welcome like the last levels before the final boss did in Doom 3. At the end, we end up in front of the Delta Lab's main teleporter, and we're sent back to Hell. Hell here is more subdued than what we got in Doom 3. You aren't being put in a birdcage or taunted by Betruger at all. It's more of a straightforward gauntlet to the portal that takes you to Betruger so you can kill him. There's a cool arena bit where you have to go through a portal and you're taken to a dark area full of columns where waves of enemies just spawn in. And this would be pretty brutal if the devs didn't throw you a bone by having a bunch of bodies scattered around. I will say the visuals before you go fight Betruger are pretty awesome.
What did you hope to accomplish by coming here, mortal? You have something that belongs to me, and I want it.
Yeah, Betruger's demon form is called the Maledict, and he's pretty tough. Mostly due to his high speeds and the fact that he loves spawning Forgotten Ones. Hitting him in his first phase is a pretty big challenge, as slower weapons like a rocket launcher are gonna have a hard time hitting him as he dive bombs the arena. He actually got nerfed in the BFG Edition because there he doesn't summon Forgotten Ones, he just uses fireballs. His attacks can also still damage you even with the artifact active. I tend to save my charges for the second phase where he flies down and perches atop the skull and then he summons a bunch of meteors. It's the best opportunity to slow down time and just unload on him with rockets or BFG shots until it's over.
Marine? Marine, welcome home.
Yeah, the ending is a little ambiguous. There's a few popular interpretations of what happened there. Some think you and McNeil died and the white light is the afterlife and McNeil is reading you there. Which, given how Betruger body slammed the Marine there, I don't think the odds of him surviving that for long are high. Also, McNeil was likely in Phobos, and I'm not sure if she was able to get out of there without getting killed by the demons or suffocating. So this interpretation definitely has some weight to it. The other one that's popular is that you and McNeil survived and she found you after you got kicked out of hell, and that you're likely on like a medical bed or something. The third, and the craziest theory, is that McNeil was secretly evil the whole time, and that she manipulated you into killing Betruger so she could take charge, and that she realized you might be dangerous and left you in hell while she leads an invasion on Earth. This theory also speculates that you have become a demon, and this is due to the fact that the artifact corrupts your hands when you hold it, and also you were feeding it human souls and didn't seem to have any qualms about that. I don't think this theory works because McNeil tells you to destroy the artifact despite it being the source of the invasion. It seems like that would hinder her plans. Also, like, she could have just asked you to give her the artifact and made up something saying, oh, I know how to close the portal or something. It just doesn't really make sense to me. But I don't think a definitive answer as to what happened at the end is given, and I don't think we need one. So to summarize my thoughts on Resurrection of Evil, it's good. It's Doom 3, but with the action cranked up, and it's way more of a power trip thanks to the artifact. However, that does come at a cost, as the horror has to take a back seat, because it would be borderline impossible to make the player afraid of enemies where they can just slow down time, become invincible, and have insta-kill punches. And that's not even factoring in the absolute GOAT that is the super shotgun. Yeah, that kind of changes things. My biggest criticism of Resurrection of Evil is that I wish there were more new enemies to compensate for the player's new abilities. The Vulgar isn't a bad enemy, but it does just feel like a retread of the Imp. The Bruiser is a challenge, but they're not very common. And the Forgotten ones, well, they're just forgettable. They're reskins of Lost Souls, and that's it. I do wish we had another common enemy or two, but when I say that aloud, I do wonder what could they have actually done, though? There was the unused Arachnotron/Spider Mastermind, so maybe they could have taken that and made it into an enemy, and I've seen that work in some Doom mods. I think the Phobos mod for Doom 3, which is a complete overhaul, adds them back, and it seems like they work there, from what I've seen anyway. I just think they needed one or two more new enemies to throw into the mix that would make the game harder even if you're relying on the artifact. The bosses are a huge step up, especially the final boss, because you can actually fight it and you don't spend almost the entire fight ignoring it. The hunters are pretty solid. The only one that I would say is kind of weak is the Berserk Hunter. I don't know, he just doesn't really feel that berserk when he jumps around a bunch. They probably could have done more with that. But that's my thoughts on Resurrection of Evil. Do I think it's better than Doom 3? No. But it does improve with some things from the base game, like the pacing. I mean, you can't really go wrong with either game, and I'm just glad it's not just more Doom 3 levels. The fact that they added a game changer like the Artifact and the Super Shotgun really spices things up, and it makes it feel like it's its own beast when you compare it to the base game. But we aren't done yet, because we gotta talk about the BFG Edition.
Here's the situation. There's a teleporter outpost in the other dimension, and it's still operational. It's very powerful, and it has a range that could lead those demons all the way to Earth. I would disable it myself.
Okay, so to give a brief rundown of some of the changes in the BFG Edition, they changed the UI, and instead of having to swap between flashlight and gun, you have an armor-mounted flashlight with a battery that recharges quickly. The game can run at higher frame rates and supports higher refresh rate monitors because of that. The texture resolution has also been improved, cutscenes are no longer skippable for some reason, and Sarge's model has been changed. One of the oddest changes is your gun no longer emits light when fired, and the game is also brighter overall. I'm not the biggest fan of the flashlight change, since there are sections of the game that are clearly designed for you to have to rely on the flashlight without a gun, like the section in Alpha Labs when you need to escort the scientist with the lamp. That section is now completely pointless in the BFG Edition. The other major changes, ammo pickups provide more ammo, and the maximum ammo capacity for a lot of the weapons have been changed. This makes the BFG Edition feel easier. I notice I die a lot less when playing it than the originals. There's some other changes, like the bodies in the walls in Delta Labs and Resurrection of Evil aren't there. The game is also brighter, which does mess with the atmosphere a bit. They also added checkpoint saves to the game, which is something I forgot to mention about the base game. There are no checkpoints. You made your own by saving. You did get autosaves at the start of each level though. BFG Edition adds autosaves. The only issue I have with them is that the game has to pause when it saves. On a computer with an SSD, it's not a big deal, but if you're on a device that doesn't have one, that pause lasts longer. This game also supports 3D. Yeah, remember when TV manufacturers and film studios were pushing 3D? Remember when that was supposed to be the next big thing? Yeah, this game came out around that time and that trend. Although, to be a little bit fair, on a whim, I looked up 3D monitors just out of curiosity, and apparently there's new 3D display tech that doesn't require glasses. So who knows, maybe the BFG Edition was ahead of the curve. I'll link the Wired article I found about it if you find that interesting and want to know more. BFG Edition also comes bundled with Doom 1 and Doom 2. However, there's been some pretty noticeable changes. In the secret Wolfenstein levels in Doom 2, all the Nazi imagery is removed, and the Nazis are replaced with zombie men. According to the wiki, they had to do this to make the game legal in Germany, because I do know Germany is kind of... Let's just say that anything depicting Nazis or Nazism, even if it's depicting them as horrible, is a touchy subject over there. If I'm not mistaken, even Wolfenstein 2 had to tone down some stuff for the German release. If I remember correctly, I saw somewhere that they had to remove Hitler's mustache in the German version of Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. Which is just funny to me. It's like, bruh, why even do that? But that's not the major thing I want to focus on, because the BFG Edition added a new campaign called the Lost Mission. The Lost Mission is 8 levels long, and according to sources, most of these were originally cut from Doom 3. In this game, you play as a member of Bravo Team that somehow survived that ambush we saw in Doom 3. The game has a start in the Empro sector, and we're contacted by a Dr. Richard Myers who works in another lab called Axis Labs, and I just gotta ask, how many fucking labs does the UAC have on Mars? Anyway, he wants us to help him and meet him in the Axis Labs. This level pack has some of the weapons from Resurrection of Evil, including the Super Shotgun and the Grabber, but no artifact, which, yeah, that makes sense. The roster is mostly Doom 3 enemies, although they substitute Lost Souls for Forgotten ones. And the Vulgar is completely absent. The Bruiser does show up, but I'm pretty sure I only saw them twice. Getting the Super Shotgun is a little annoying because you find the gun locked away behind a keypad, and you get the PDA with the code after going through a few more rooms and down an elevator. So you then have to backtrack through the level to go back to the room to unlock the shotgun. Of course, you could just look up the code, and I find myself doing that whenever I replay this. But after we get through N-Pro, we have to go through some underground sectors that feel like they were meant to be part of the Mars City underground area from the start of Doom 3. While it's cool to see cut content repurposed into a separate pack of levels, and I wish more games that get remakes or remasters would do this, these levels aren't particularly amazing. They're not bad, it's just more Doom 3. And I also noticed that a lot of levels and areas have copy-pasted rooms from other parts of the base game. Axis Labs is probably the worst offender of this because a lot of the rooms from that are modified Delta Lab rooms with a different color palette and the word Axis Labs on the side. There are also newly activated audio logs in the game, which are pretty well done. We end up meeting Myers, and he explains that there is a teleporter set up in Hell that has enough range to reach Earth. Myers needs us to go into Hell, reach the teleporter, then turn it on so he can send an energy wave from Axis Labs to there to overload it and destroy it. But to do that, we gotta get a plasma inducer. So you have to venture across Axis Labs, which, as I said earlier, is a lot of repurposed rooms from the Delta Labs, with a fresh coat of paint on them. When we pick up the inducer, we run into a bruiser. Once we kill it, we then head over to the big-ass teleporter, and we're sent to Hell. And visually, this version of Hell has a lot going for it. The opening bit is gorgeous, and there's this part where you walk across floating platforms, which is visually beautiful in a hellish kind of way. The game throws a decent amount of tough enemies at you, including a vagary at one point. One of the coolest parts is at the end of the first stage, we have to ride a boat across a lake of lava to the Hell outpost. Really cool way to end that part. Unfortunately, the final level has a bit of a boring section. We have to ascend a staircase while enemies keep spawning. It's a bit of a drag, but ultimately we end up at the massive teleporter in Hell. When we activate it, the scientist begins the process to overload it, but this causes hordes of demons to spawn in. So we gotta fend them off, and at one point we end up getting teleported back to Mars to fight some more demons before getting sent back to Hell. That was a pretty cool little set piece. But just when you think it's over, a Guardian spawns in.
Okay, I think I've stabilized it for now. I'm showing the teleporter there at 75%. Just a few more minutes, and I should be able to send the surge. Wait a minute. I'm reading something in an incoming transference wave. Marine, something big is headed your way.
Yeah, this one has been modified so you can damage it with your guns and it's no longer blind. It will walk after you and slam its fist into the ground to send projectiles out in a pattern, or it'll stab you with its horns if you get too close. Since the arena isn't a maze, and since you have infinite stamina in hell, you can just back up and hammer it with the BFG and other high damaging weapons. It's not a particularly hard fight. With the Guardian dead, the teleporter begins to overload. We have to get to the center to teleport back to Mars. By the time we get there, Myers and a dropship from Earth is here to pick us up.
Sheriff 1, Dark Star lowering to surface. Dark Star confirmed we have visual moving to pick up.
Nice work, Marine.
This ending contradicts some things from the base game, because if I remember correctly, the Marine from the base game was the only survivor. So I'm gonna assume this is not canon, or some kind of retcon. The Lost Mission overall, it's nothing amazing, but it's a short, condensed Doom 3 experience, which I can see the appeal of, especially if you're trying to play on the go, or if you have a Nintendo Switch or a Steam Deck. It's just more Doom 3 with some sprinkling of the expansion pack mixed in. I don't know, it's like a cheap delivery pizza. It's not amazing, but when you want something to eat, especially when it's late at night and you don't feel like cooking something, or you don't have anything in the fridge to cook, it's not bad. It gets the job done. Alright, let's wrap this up.
What did you hope to accomplish by coming here, mortal? You have something that belongs to me, and I want it.
So that's everything Doom 3 related. If I was gonna rank each campaign, Doom 3, the base game, gets first place, Resurrection of Evil gets second, and Lost Mission is in third. I doubt anyone is surprised by that order. I would say play Doom 3 and its expansion first, and if you really want more, then maybe consider Lost Mission. Now, I was going to do a whole bit where I was going to say, do I recommend BFG Edition or the original? But then I looked on Steam and remembered, oh yeah, if you just buy the BFG Edition, you get the originals now. They're all bundled together, so what I was going to say on which one you should buy is kind of pointless now. So I'll just say which one I think is the better experience, and it's kind of a tough question because it's going to depend on you. If you want higher refresh rates and higher frame rates, then BFG Edition is the way to go. Not to mention you can run the game at higher resolutions right out of the gate without having to go into config files or install a mod. That being said though, there's more mods for base Doom 3 than there is BFG Edition, although there are some mods that work with BFG Edition, so that might not matter as much to you. But in my opinion, I prefer Doom 3 with some slight graphical mods over the BFG Edition. Not to mention some of the mods for Doom 3, for the textures and stuff, make the BFG Edition's texture upgrades not seem that impressive. Just saying. But like I said, this is kind of redundant since you can just get it on Steam for $10 and you get all versions of the game, which is a steal. So you really can't go wrong with playing either version. So that's the end of the Doom 3 part of this retrospective, and yeah, I'm gonna need a break from Doom before we tackle the rest of the series, because we got Doom 64, Doom 2, Doom, and I'm thinking of giving Final Doom and the Master of Doom 2 their own little bonus episode. And last but certainly not least is Doom the Dark Ages. But since October is right around the corner, or it might be by the time I finish editing this video together, I'm gonna take a break from covering Doom games, and you know what? I'll tease what the next game is gonna be. But let me know what you guys think of the expansion and the Lost Missions, and if you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment, and consider subscribing. And if you can tell what game is coming up next based on the teaser, post it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and you have a good one.